A really big part of studying when you're in a school in Australia or America or anything like this is interacting with or dealing with grades. Grading means any kind of measurement or evaluation of how you're performing in these contexts. Learning doesn't need grading necessarily. What it's really evaluating is how well did the methods of learning that took place, how well did they improve the performance of a student? Or rather, another way to think of it is it's also evaluating the people who created those learning methods or tried to apply the learning methods, like the teacher or the head teachers or the people who created curriculums, things like this. So grading is widespread. Grading is yeah, it's ubiquitous. It's felt by everyone. It's important not just to the feelings of a student. It's important to the teachers. It's important to parents, especially. And maybe that's the most important thing of it all is it's being used to justify why we're spending sometimes small amounts of money, but often a lot of money on these practices. So that's what grades are, that's what grading is. Let's examine some of the consequences of grades, particularly in academic contexts. If you're graded, you're given a number, and a number can be ordered. And because of that, you know where you sit relative to your class. If you know where you sit relative to your class, you can and will compare yourself to others. And I mean, it's a platitude at this point, but comparison is the thief of joy. Things like this, it's so clear to us that we should be trying to avoid such things, and yet grading facilitates it. So why is that bad? You're really just indulging envy or creating envy in a situation where maybe it's not necessary. But in particular, when we're worried about learning is like maybe just best described as the accumulation of knowledge, and it's not obvious at all why that would need to be a thing to be compared with others. Like certainly, if we're trying to get skillful at something, and you want to be the person who gets picked for the team or the person who gets picked for the job, then yeah, you will be compared. But in the process of learning and getting better and all of that, it might be more problematic than a good thing to have this thing occurring. And yeah, so certainly like you could become envious and go, well, fuck that other kid in the class, I'm gonna get better than them, and I'm gonna show how good I am. But really, what happens there is the emphasis is less on like learning for the sake of learning and learning to win, and learning to win against others distracts you from I think the broader goal, or the more important goal, which is like you're actually learning so that you're better than yourself. So like grades can facilitate that if you're comparing with yourself, comparing the current grade you got with the grade you got before. Obviously, like exams differ in difficulty, so that's hard to do as well. The more clear-cut comparison is just comparing yourself with others. So to me, grades don't force it to happen, but it's pretty inevitable that kids will start comparing with others because of grades. Where if you had an exam where grades were withheld, it was just a pass mark, or grades weren't even a part of it at all. It was just sort of a more freedom-based exploratory task where it was just about having a go. You wouldn't have this problem per se. Slightly more subtle consequence of grades is that if you get really good at something, as evidenced by the number you're getting, especially relative to others, if you then go and try something new and you're no longer ranking first, second, third, whatever, the consequence of that may be that you just decide, well, I'm already good at something. I kind of like the feeling that I get when I perform in that other thing. I like to see that I do better than others, and this new thing where I'm not achieving the same results, I'm not getting that same feeling, and so I won't continue. And really what I'm saying is because you're so good at one thing, the confidence you have to try other things goes out the window. This is a very real consequence of grades. I think it contributes to the feeling that like you're locked into certain things. I think it's a really significant part of careers as well. People get good at a job and they kind of feel trapped in that career. I now have to continue progressing down this path, because if I transition to some other thing, I'll be at a lower ranking position. I will be certainly, the threat or the concern is I'll be paid less. Um, and what that really says is, like, I'm much more driven or motivated, unfortunately, by the status of my position, as opposed to what I actually enjoy. And so if you diminish confidence in this sense, and I think that's what grading does, if you diminish it, you create a mind that is driven to always look and appear as though they're the best, often in spite of what they enjoy, often in spite of what they find to be fun. And it really is fun to try new things, to engage in novel experiences. And actually, if you really want to get good at something, it's not a bad idea to explore other things. You can really gain a lot of knowledge from another area and bring it back into whatever that thing is you're an expert at. Like, I'll just cite, for instance, a book that I was just talking about this with my coach today. The book's called Range, David Epstein, and it's all about how those who are willing to explore a whole variety or range of different things within career, business, sports, or academia, research, those who are willing to do that always do far better, because there's a whole range of reasons you can give, but one of them is, like, you just have a greater access to a larger pool of analogies, a larger pool of experience from which you can draw inspiration for how to solve the present problem in front of you at that moment. There's also heaps of examples in there about music and, like, just trying loads and loads of different instruments. If you're really, really good at one instrument and you've been doing it for 15 years, it's quite hard to abandon all the status of that, throw it away, and be willing to fail, especially if you're around other people. Be willing to fail and look bad on a new instrument. It's really quite difficult. So this to me, confidence is the best way to summarize it. Confidence is another cost of grades, or can be a cost of grades. The next one I want to talk about is the way in which grades can subvert the sincere and genuine interest you have in something. And this is what I feel is the most detrimental impact in my life of having been graded for things that I actually used to enjoy, or maybe I think I still enjoy them a little, but yeah, like, if I'd not been graded in certain subjects or in certain sports settings, I think I would have kept doing them, or the process of doing them would have been far more healthy, I would say. So in particular, for me, what I think happened was, I'll just quickly share this story. So when I was really young, when I was less than the age to go to kindergarten, I remember running out into my backyard, and I was very excited, and I said to my mum, I just figured out that 6 and 6 makes 12. And I hadn't even been to school. I hadn't learnt formally to count. I hadn't, any of this stuff. But for me, there was, like, a genuine, sincere, real interest in maths, in taking some information and utilizing some operations to figure out something thereafter. What is the consequence of that information? Like a subset of logic, right? And when I got to school, and I was particularly influenced by my parents and their insistence on getting good grades. But when I got to school, it very quickly became, oh, if I keep studying, I can get a higher grade. I can get a higher grade than everyone. I can get the highest grade. I can pursue 100. What if I get 100 in everything? And that was something that really persisted with me all through primary school, all through high school, and in university as well. So when I completed my high school certificate, I got a grade ATAR, but I had no idea what came after. And you would say, well, the only way, what I did was I studied very hard. I studied obscenely hard. You can ask anyone. I don't think I studied in a particularly healthy manner, or necessarily even the most efficient way, especially for some subjects. But I studied so hard that I got a great mark, but thereafter I fell off a cliff. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And the only way I can explain that is, the thing which granted me the energy to study so hard was simply the mark. Whereas a lot of kids will, if they're fortunate enough, have spent enough time thinking about and maybe experiencing different careers to where they think, well, the mark is a means towards that career objective, right? At least to get my foot in the door, to get the degree I want, these things. For me, it was simply the mark. And if you find yourself in this situation where you don't know what comes after, you're hoping that once you get the mark, it will resolve things and then you can worry about it. You're really going to be confronted by a quite unpleasant reality, which is the moment the big exam is finished, the grade, so to speak, the moment that ends, you will fall off a cliff spiritually. The meaning with which drives you will be gone, and you might be so stupid as to do what I did, which was pick the degree based on the mark I got, which is a real, to me, that was the most revealing thing. It wasn't at the time, but when I look back, it was the most revealing thing to say, you made this the central point of your life, the focus of everything. It's over, and you're trying to extract what little meaning you can from it still thereafter. And the meaning was, well, I got this mark, and that enables me to do this course, and that's the highest course I can get, so I'm going to do that course, which is just crazy. Nowhere in that at all is anything about interest. And when you compare that to when I started, running out into that backyard to talk to my mum and say, my goodness, I've figured it out. I've spent some time and I've realized that 6 and 6 makes 12. You compare that with the person I was when I was 18 finishing the HSC, and you realize something's been lost along the way. And to me, what I think it is I've subverted my interests, my sincere and genuine interests, which happen to be in maths, and I've subverted that to the goal of achieving the highest mark. This to me, I'll just share a little bit more. This persisted through university, and increasingly I started to run into some hurdles. Uni's a little bit harder, but I still managed to scrape by, and especially because uni also has marks. So I was chasing very high marks. I wanted high distinctions. I wanted first class honors. And it wasn't until I got most of the way through my honors and I actually hit a kind of wall where the amount of effort I had to put in was so great, and the satisfaction, when I say satisfaction, it's really, it's more like, I want to describe it more as lust at this point, but the satisfaction I gained from obtaining a very high mark was so undernourishing at this point that when I got about 2 weeks out from my honors submission, I just cracked it. And I really sat there and I'm sitting at the library and I'm thinking, am I interested in what I'm learning about at all? I happened to be doing a microeconomics thesis, and sort of ironically, the thesis was all about how do you kind of min-max KPIs? How do you make them so that people can't, once you figure out what a KPI is at work, a key performance indicator, it's very easy, or it becomes sort of your objective to just maximize the KPIs because you're being evaluated based on it. So you put all your effort towards the KPI. Now, if a KPI doesn't measure outcome perfectly, which it never will, then, for instance, if all your manager cares about is how many hours you spend at your desk, that's not really the same thing as getting work done. So you'll just make sure to spend a lot of hours at your desk. Anyway, so the whole point of my thesis was, and it was a very small thing, but it was just, is there a way to kind of make the KPI a little bit noisy and messy so that all the effort you put towards it doesn't necessarily kind of pay off? One example would be, you're not being evaluated personally, your team is being evaluated. Well, there's only so much you can influence that. So the end result is maybe there's a way to min-max this or finesse it so that it's appropriately messy, and the employee goes, you know what, bugger it, I won't put all my effort towards maximizing this KPI. I'll put more effort towards actually doing my job, and then because that contributes to the KPI sort of indirectly, then you kind of get an employee that does what they should or what you would want them to do. But anyway, all this to say, I didn't give a fuck about this like at all. In fact, when I went to my coordinator, I said to him, all I want is a first class honors, and you pick the thing. Like, I don't care about it. And that, really is just obscene. Like, why would you ever be conducting research on anything if you're not interested in it? Like, why, like, and to expect yourself to be able to keep that up for a year. And, I'm sure some people do. I'm sure some people are grittier than I am. I thought I was pretty gritty, but I couldn't get to the end of it. But yeah, to me, it's an obscenity. What I did was I subverted genuine interest, or what happened was, I think I hold blame here, but I genuinely subverted my own interests to this kind of idolization of a number. And this perversion, for me and for many people, I think this is subtle, but I think it's happening all the time. This perversion really ruins the experience of learning for a lot of people, learning in settings wherever there's grading. And I would say that this one is particularly pernicious because someone who is pursuing high grades has the appearance of a really good model student, and they're rewarded for it. They're praised for it. So what comes with this kind of addictive, like, but really empty and meaningless pursuit of the number, what comes with this is praise, which sort of solidifies it and entrenches it. It makes it very hard to get rid of. I want to leave you with the idea, or the thought, or the question at least, that is it necessary that we have grades? Now, we're constantly caught up in this world of evaluating things, and it's sort of a story of optimization. We're trying to make sure that the way we use our time is optimal, and that the learning strategies we pursue and use are optimal, and that the teachers are performing at a high enough level that the students aren't being gimped or hindered relative to another class. And then from the parents' perspective, we want to make sure that our students, our children, they're not falling behind. We don't want them to lose this kind of rat race. But, and this is my conjecture here, but I think all it's meant to do is just prep you for like the real world version of grading, which is just dealing with KPIs in a corporate environment. And to me, that is so disconnected from the true goal of school, which is to learn. And really, I honestly believe you can learn anything if you're interested, and that's kind of it. Like, if you're interested in something and you have the confidence to try it, that's kind of all you need. And you're just off on this journey, and you will fail, and you'll do things inefficiently and all this stuff, but it's not obvious to me that you can do it any other way. Or rather, let's say you can do it this other way, but it requires grading. I think the cost of that is more severe. So yeah, the thought, I just want to leave you with a couple of like specific questions which would get you thinking. If we're talking about a school setting, you just did a test, the question I want to leave you with is, could the student have learnt to have done better in the test if they'd never been graded? Can the athlete, or the aspiring athlete, a child who's playing a sport, can he learn to get better if he's not corrected on his technique? Is it possible for them to get better? They have the goal in mind of pursuing the task, kicking the ball in the goal, or running it down the field, or tackling the person over. They have all these goals. Is that enough? They're interested and they have the goals. Is that enough? Or do they need correction and grading? Do they need those things? And then finally as well, if you're interested in something and you're investigating it, you're researching it, you're learning about it, whether that's the contribution of your own personal research, expanding the field of information, or the field of knowledge, or the sort of the scope of that thing, or whether it's just researching for the first time and just getting up to date on a topic. In either case, whether you're contributing or just catching up, can you get good at that? Can you become knowledgeable at that without being told how well you did it? Is that possible?